What's up YouTube, Chronos here, and welcome back to another PSO2 guide video. So first, I'm recording this on May the 4th, so may the 4th be with everyone. That whole joke and everything. I'm actually a pretty big Star Wars fan, so it's kind of cool. I like seeing all the memes and stuff like that. But anyway, so I was kind of like laying in bed last night thinking to myself, I could go over a video of just all the weapons you actually want to use moving forward. Now granted, we did talk about how to choose your weapons. I did that whole video talking about potentials, so on and so forth, but I figured maybe a more targeted go through each weapon category and just pick out the weapons that I would go for and actually use in the current, and I say this in quotes, end game, wouldn't be a bad idea, just to give people an idea of my thought process. And you guys can kind of take a look at, and I can kind of take a look at it from the perspective of you guys just looking through the wiki. So I jumped on and I was about to start recording that video and I told myself, wait, maybe I should look at some of these weapons ahead of time just to make sure, just in case there's some things missing from the wiki, or maybe it's not as cut and dry as I may think it is. And that was exactly what happened. There were some things missing from the wiki, and it's not as cut and dry as I thought it would be for every single weapon category. There's some that are really, really easy to figure out, but there are others that are may require a bit of testing on your part. I actually just invested and I wouldn't recommend anyone else do this unless you really want to know, but I invested like 10 mil roughly into testing out two weapons versus each other that I thought was a pretty obvious pick. Granted, I ended up being right, but not by nearly as much as I thought would matter. No, I'm sorry, not by nearly as much as I thought, and honestly, it doesn't really make much of a difference regardless, so either way, let's go ahead and pop through this. So before we go into this, just as a heads up, guys, this video is just meant to be informative to help people out with making decisions. You're not by any means required to go with what I say. My word is not law under any circumstances. By all means, I suggest you test these things out yourselves. This is just meant to help provide some guidance into my insight personally as someone who's played the game for a very long time and how I make decisions of the weapons I choose. Now, if you happen to come across, or I come across a weapon, I'm like, this is terrible, I'm gonna use it, whatever. Toss in the comments your reason for using it if it actually is pretty good. I mean, maybe you've tested something out that I don't know. I literally tested something out this morning that I thought I was gonna be wrong about, ended up being right about, but it wasn't it was so close, it doesn't even really matter, to be honest. So, highly recommend toss stuff in the comments, but we could ramble on forever about this. Let's just jump right into it. So, we're of course on the NA version of the ARC's Vigiphone wiki. We're going to pop down to swords and start here. So this one was actually not too difficult of a choice. Now, I personally haven't tested it, but also cost is a big thing I'm going to pull into these when I'm deciding on what weapon to use. So this is, again, these are my decisions on what weapons I would use in this given category, playing this given class. So some people have this meme for the Dragon Slayer. It increases the damage of normal attacks by 80%. Now it's pretty substantial, right? But its base power is only 1k at max 35. And I'm pretty sure this weapon's actually really expensive. So unless it was super cheap, honestly, I really wouldn't go for it. I would just sell the thing and move on with my life. Now granted, I could be wrong about that. I haven't checked it recently. But I don't really see a lot of people running around with it. And I haven't seen it in any of the shops easy to get. Plus, I mean, they don't have a drop table for it. So I'm pretty sure it requires a drop from somewhere and it's not the easiest thing in the world to get. So I'd probably just sell it personally and move on. Now, as far as weapons to use, again, this one's kind of cut and dry. The Lightning Espada is pretty buff. Granted, you need 3 of them total, meaning you'll have to purchase them from the weapon shop or you can buy them with Meseta off of the market. But it'll get you to 60 elements, and its potential is 23% increased damage and PP recovery when attacking an element that matches the enemy's elemental weakness, or if the weakness is lightning. Technically, right now, most things are weak to light and lightning, so you can get away with just having light. And lightning is covers the robots and things like that. So you cover most of the elemental weaknesses. There's some one-off situations where something's weak to what is it, dark or what's the other one? It's either dark or ice. Yeah, in those situations this won't do as much damage, but to be honest, you'll still pretty much crush those, and it only matters for bosses. So for sword, for me at least, it was pretty cut and dry. This is one of the better swords. 23% increased damage is substantial, and then of course the healing. So even if this would have given you a bit more damage. I probably would have still gone Lightning Espada because one, it's all class, so it's useful for leveling up main and sub if you're that type of person. And on top of that, it gives you healing as well. I actually used the Lightning Espada to level Summoner, fun fact, because Summoner is a decent subclass. I leveled Summoner as a Summoner Hunter and just used a Hunter main class with a Summoner subclass tree. So that was my way of leveling Summoner. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. I was able to actually deal with content pretty easily. And that's how I did it. I wouldn't recommend everyone do it that way. Maybe you like Summoner, I say go for it. So our choice, Lightning Espada. Wired Lances. So Wired Lances, there aren't a lot of choices in this one. This is one of the ones I had to actually kind of dive into, but to be honest, it comes down to Revulsio. Revulsio tends to be the cost-effective choice. Now, I was looking at the Assassin's Claw because of the damage to Heavenly Drop, but I mean, I don't think that's really worth it. Glorious Wing, again, it's just elemental weakness, not really that great. And then you've got Sigma and Nox. Nox is just melee power when PP, or I'm sorry, melee and range power by 300 when PP is at 50% or less, which not really that great. And the Revulsio is just kind of the choice here. So I was saying this in my previous video, I was saying Revolutio, and I was like, why am I thinking that? Where am I getting that from? Because that's the name for it on the JP server. There's a U there, but on the NA servers, there's not. So that's where I was getting that from. So Revulsio, Revolutio, however you want to pronounce it, it's this weapon here. Now, the aura will put out more damage, I believe, properly affixed using the proper, I mean, even not properly affixed, to be honest, just using this potential here will put out a bit more damage. However, it's also worth more money. So I would just sell the aura and get a Revulsio and call it a day. It's not enough damage for you to really worry about. And I'm not really sure how these end up working out, to be honest. You tend to move around a lot, or you kind of have like the sweet spot is as Wired Lance. I'd imagine Approaching Storm might be the best choice in this situation, but again, it would probably sell for a decent amount, so I would go ahead and just hawk the damn thing. Move on. So, and you're going to find this ends up being the case in a lot of these weapons. So here's one I have probably the least experience with is Partisan. Looking at the different weapons, Bluesy is not something that I would even really worry about. I mean, it's okay, I guess. It's just damage increase of Assault Buster, and this is not a potential I would look at because you're going to take a hit regardless. The Bardiche is it's okay, it's solid. If you're not having issues with PP, I would say Spear Revolutio. If you want, I mean, granted, you could probably like generate enough PP to then spend on damage and actually make up the damage loss. So Bardiche is probably a good choice here. But if not, between Bardiche and Revolutio. Now, Titan Stinger, yes, does more damage. Its potential is better. It's going to do more damage. However, again, it's probably worth a lot more money. So just sell it, get one of these two, and you're good to go for now. I don't know about Imperial Pick, really. Imperial Pick's kind of weird. So I really didn't go too far into it. It's a cool, like, novel weapon. If you want to play Fighter Hunter and use an Imperial Pick, it's an option. So there you go. Daggers is pretty easy. If you're playing Fighter that hardcore, you can actually get away with using 2 daggers for bossing. The Twin Kamui, or Kamui, or whatever the hell you want to call them, you would get increased 70% increased damage when your HP is 25% or lower. So you press overdrive, 70% increased damage. That's where Fighter does their most damage anyway. You want to be in overdrive as much as possible. So Twin Kamui in those situations. And then when you're not in overdrive, Lavis Blades, I mean, I guess Thrust, Revulsio aren't a bad choice. You know, between one of these two is probably a good choice, but you could probably get away with just using the Twin Kamui. You don't need to have 2 different weapons for overdrive versus non-overdrive. It's not that big of a deal. Double sabers, I hate to say it, don't use them. At least not for now. They're really, really behind. I guess if you're playing Fighter and you need a weapon to mob with, double saber is probably your best choice. I personally just use Knuckles and use Heartless Impact from mob to mob and just kind of like, you know, smash them really quick and move it on to the next. But if you're going to use one, it's kind of a toss-up between these two. You do get, let's see, so this one is increased power as you do successive perfect attacks, and it goes up to 18%. Honestly, I haven't personally tested it. I'm not sure how that would end up working out. I would just go the safe route and use the Revulsio. It's probably not by enough for it to make a difference. I mean, 18% is pretty substantial, but as I found that perfect attack effectiveness actually isn't that bad. So I would say save your money, probably go for the Revolcio. The double sabers really aren't that great anyway, right? So, plus if you're going to use these, probably using it for mobbing. And by mobbing, I mean killing small enemies, if you're not familiar with the terminology. So, Knuckles. Knuckles is not too difficult. Divine Fist potential, I believe, is just increases damage against your element type, so not really that great. I don't know when you would ever use Knuckles as a ranger, to be honest, so I probably wouldn't look into that. It does give you alternate history if you plus 35 it, but I wouldn't do that either personally. That would require 6 of these, which, unless they're selling really cheap on the market board, I really wouldn't mess with too much. This goes worth mentioning. If you mix this with all of the armor, then technically it's probably one of the strongest options you have here, but I'd just sell it. Revolcio tends to be the one that I'd go for here. Again, Aura and Titan Smasher, those that Titan Smasher would be your best choice as far as damage goes, but I'd probably sell that too. So Revolcio is kind of like the middle ground where things are all right. And for those that are, so I've seen this thing recently where fighters are going for like, I think it's Guana Soul, and then getting poison on their weapon as well. That way they can use Chase. I guess that's not a bad choice, but I mean, the super big bosses, you can't poison them anyway. So I personally don't mess with situations where I can't use it on everything, right? And the smaller enemies are just going to kill them. So that's an option. And that's something you can look at there. The potential, or if getting it to plus 35 gives you that. And a lot of these Revolcios are pretty cheap nowadays. So, and they're not too difficult to grind. Moving to Katanas. So this is where I actually ended up having to go do some testing my own because I heard of something else that happened different for someone else. So on paper, just looking at these weapons, Yami versus the Revolcio, you would think Yami would actually win out because of its potential being 14% perfect attack damage versus the effect of perfect attacks by 8%. However, I heard from a reliable friend who's played quite a bit of Braver that he actually had the reverse. He had the Revolcio come out higher than the Yami. So I would say they're relatively close. Again, Aura is one of those that I'd just probably sell for now. Yasha, your HP is really not going to ever be lower than, I mean, like, unless you're doing Fighter Braver, I suppose, then I guess Yasha would be a good choice here. But it'd be a toss-up between these two. So I would say up to you in the end. The one merit that Revolcio will have is for Braver specifically. Whenever you're popping Katana combat, there's a PA that you spam. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's kind of like you draw your sword and it does like a shockwave in front of you. You tend to spam that to get your Katana combat built up. So in that situation, Revolcio is going to do more damage than Yami because you're not alternating PAs, you're just spamming one over and over again. So that's something to keep in mind. So it would be a toss-up between these two. Okay, so Soaring Blades, you want more than one technically. So you want an Orochi. Orochi does 60% increase break stance damage, so it's very useful for breaking parts on monsters. Elder Arms, Luther Arms, Luther parts, Elder parts, like all those like that you can break, this works on. Now keep in mind, it does not work with break stance D on your tree, so unless the part is breakable, you will not get the 60% bonus. And for those who don't know, break stance D increases or gives you a 90% chance to proc your break stance damage bonus multiplier on non-breakable parts. So I tested these two weapons personally. I actually, funny enough, I affixed the Blade Revolcio to be stronger by about 28 melee power than the Milo Bright. However, the Milo Bright pushed out a bit more damage. The way I did it was just making sure to give myself a baseline, went and jumped over to the Rock Bear practice or whatever and used a PA 3 times in a row. So that way I knew it had its perfect attack bonus and everything else that it could possibly need. And the Milo Bright ended up pushing out a little bit more damage. It was like, and the more damage it pushed out was literally 31k to 32k. Not that big of a deal. So Milo Bright did end up winning out overall in the end. And it also comes along with 30% increased PP recovery while in the air. So technically Milo Bright would be the better choice. However, if you wanted to go hard on making sure you had a perfect palette, what I personally would do would be selling the Milo Bright, would making 6 Blade Revolcios, 1 for every element, and then having a Twin Orochi light. Technically maybe 1 or 2. But I really hope you guys can't hear that outside. I think my trash is being picked up, but whatever. Yeah, I'm looking over at OBS while it's recording. It doesn't look like it actually plays. But hold on, let me do something really quick. and we're leaving that in. We're not cutting that. That's going to be annoying to have to deal with. So anyway, so yeah, just so you're aware, that's kind of the test I had between it. But again, between all of those, Titan Blazers are going to be stronger. I would just sell it personally, or same thing. I feel like, again, it's going to be a point where you'll be able to get these weapons easier for the price they're selling for. It's better just to make the money. I don't feel like the damage difference is going to make that big a deal. If you're one of those crazy mad lads that use Gunblades, Revulsia. So just Revulsia. Just that's pretty much your only choice. It's the only 13-star we have here. I don't know if this works the way I think it is. There's so on JP, there's always the meta of having a weapon that's like PP batteries, what they call them, where it just boosts your natural PP regen. When you're low, you switch over to it, it boosts the natural PP regen, it comes back up. I don't know if that's how this works. It just says boost PP recovery speed by 16%. So there's merit for this here. I don't know how easy it is to get this weapon though, so you're kind of on your own there. But yeah, if you're one of those crazy people that wants to play Gunblade, first off, play Fighter Hunter. Overdrive is the only way to make that Gunblade do enough damage for it to actually matter. And Revulsia is your choice. Your only one, really. So rifles is one of the ones that are pretty easy. It's just Elder Rifle. Elder Rifle does the most damage. That's the long and short of it. It's just Elder Rifle with moving snipe damage bonus. It's doing the most. It's going to continue to do the most for a while. Honorable mention is the Avenger if you're doing multi-class leveling. It's a multi-class weapon. It's an all-class weapon, so you can use that. That's kind of worth, but none of the rest of these weapons come close to Elder Rifle, at least from what I've found. Launcher, pretty easy on this one too. I'd sell this personally. I wouldn't hold on to it. If you happen to get a hold of it, it's not bad. It's PP recovered by 20% and reduced consumption by 20%, so it's pretty solid. But Revulsia is what you're going to probably look towards for damage. And then of course you have the all class option, which is the shooting drive. I personally would make a shooting drive while you're leveling up all your classes and just keep that, just because you've already invested money into it. The damage difference between these two are not going to be high enough for it to matter, in my opinion. Twin machine guns. Missouri Twins is probably what I'd look into in this case. Missouri Twins apply its damage bonus no matter what you're hitting, where Bullet Revulsios only apply to precision points, which granted you should be hitting those. However, can't always. This also gives you increased PP recovery, and it's all class. So again, it's one of those things where you have multi-use out of it. So 3 of these will get you 60% all class. Other than that, sell the rest. Sell the aura. Dude, I don't even know. This is kind of the same thing. You kind of dance around from mid to long or mid to short range as a gunner. So mostly short range, but to mid range and short range. So I wouldn't really mess with this too much. And then I would probably just sell this. So bows were a bit of a weird spot for me. I had to do a bit more digging into bows to figure this out. So with bows, I think you would hold on to 2. The Rikuteri is not a bad bow. It's got a pretty solid potential, boost perfect attack damage by 70% when using different PAs. If you're alternating PAs, I would say Rikuteri. If you're spamming the same one, I would probably say Revulsio. But having a dolls in the background, because it increases your damage during your rapid fire by 20 or by 34%, I believe this actually would have it push more damage than these two here. I haven't personally tested this, so I would say your mileage may vary. You can get this from either Loot or Drop, or you can get it from the shop. They're relatively cheap actually, so it wouldn't be too expensive to try this out to see if it works out for you. But just make sure when you're testing it versus your other weapons, they're as close to the same amount of damage as you possibly can get them. I mean, it's like almost 300 difference in main stat here, but just get them to as close as you possibly can when you're testing it, and see how well it fares. So I would say it'd be a toss up between how you're playing with these two weapons, and then this would probably be a good offhand weapon to have. Rods is another one of those that you're pretty much only gonna take one. It's Psycho Wand. Psycho Wand's just so crazy stronger. It's got increased damage and increased PP recovery. I would say honorable mention would be like Aura, but again, I'd sell it. Shaft, but again, I'd sell like these. There's no reason for these two weapons to exist. With Psycho Wand being as strong as it is, no offense. And this weapon here, this Clarita, not a bad idea, just so because you have it as an all-class weapon. So some people, they pick up this weapon first, they then level, they level 4, or I guess, what's it called? Techer first, and then go to Forest. And then when you're leveling Force, pick up your Cycle 1 and just keep going, and then sell this Clarita. So there's that. So Talises are kind of weird. I don't really use them very much, but looking at Talises, this one has so much more main stat than anything else. I'd probably go for it. However, its potential, like its secondary potential, is kind of useless at the moment. Increased multi-element technique gauge fill rate. I'm pretty sure they're talking about combine or compound techniques, which I don't believe are in the game yet. This also has it boosts your attack PP recovery rate by 80%. And again, it has so much main stat that I would probably just go with the Galwind and just hold on to it for now, because we may be getting compound techs relatively soon. And your other choice is a card Revulsia, which is a bit less main stat, but it only gives you 8% damage on charge techs. So, but again, if you're playing any of these other two classes, if you're playing Techer, you're not using this really. And if you're playing Force, you're using the Cycle Wand because it's way stronger. So there you go. Wands, so Techers, hear me out. I know a lot of people like playing support and they're playing Techer and they're like, I want to support. You're playing support, but you smack with your wand. You're pretty much melee power. So it's kind of weird, but your techs are actually used all for support. Now, granted, yes, there are some builds that people use where your techs actually deal damage and things like that, but I personally am not experienced with it. I'm not going to talk to it. I believe it's only specific when you get into compound techs. I believe like simple compound techs with like the was it Tech or Phantom? But again, that's just something I've heard. I haven't personally tested it out, so take that with a grain of salt. Basically, Revulsia is going to be your choice. I would probably sell the Aura because it's worth quite a bit. And if you happen to get a hold of a Form Scythe, that's kind of a tough one because it's very, very useful as a Techer. At the same time, it's also extremely expensive. So it's up to you 100%. Know that you will replace this. There is a 14-star that replaces this pretty hardcore. However, this is going to be of use for you for quite some time. So it's kind of a personal preference. I would go for the Revulsia though. But if you get the drop for this, whew, oh buddy, I just wouldn't buy one. If you happen to get the drop, then I mean, you didn't spend any money anyway, right? But, you know, teaches their own, I suppose. Jet boots. Jet boots, jet boots, jet boots. So again, this is one of those situations like the Form Wand. The Form Greaves are really, really strong for jet boots. But again, they're super expensive. They are probably the better choice overall. There is an argument to be made for the Lightning Claws, but I would sell those because I don't think they're worth the snot personally, but that's just me personally. And if nothing else, the Revulsias are a good choice. So these are the Revulsia is kind of like one of those weapons where it's just like it's a solid choice no matter where you're looking at, unless there is a weapon that's just substantially stronger, like for rifle and for a rod. And I don't even know why I'm clicking on harmonizers. There's literally one. Just level up your pets. All right, so that was a little longer than I wanted it to be, but there was a lot to talk about and a lot of weapons to go over. If you guys happen to have any other recommendations of your own for players, by all means, toss us in the comments. I haven't been doing this in my previous videos, but so we recently hit 1,000 subscribers. That's really, really awesome. I appreciate that, guys, a whole lot. That does mean monetization is now unlocked for the channel itself. I haven't put that on any of the videos so far because I don't feel like any of them are really worth monetizing itself. I kind of want to bring a better quality video to you guys if I'm going to be doing something along those lines. However, it does help me if you guys do toss a like on the video itself. And of course, subscribe if you want to keep up with more content that I'll be releasing. But yeah, that covers everything. You guys take care. See you all in the next one.